The Vanishing Act. The notification light on Priya Malhotra's phone blinked once, then disappeared. Much like her husband's online presence every Wednesday evening at precisely 8:30 p.m. Unavailable was what the messaging app displayed next to Rahul's name. Not offline, not away, unavailable. As if he had deliberately toggled a setting to vanish from the digital world. Priya stared at her phone screen, the harsh light illuminating her face in the dimness of her home office, where patient files lay scattered across her desk. At 34, Priya had built a successful career as a pediatric physical therapist. Her days were filled with helping children overcome mobility challenges, teaching them to trust their bodies again after injuries or illnesses. Trust was something she understood professionally and valued personally, which was why the pattern of Rahul's disappearances had started to gnaw at her. "Working late again," he'd texted earlier. "Don't wait up. Big project deadline." It was the same message, almost verbatim, that she'd received for the past 6 Wednesdays. Rahul, a financial analyst at one of Mumbai's top investment firms, had always worked long hours. But these Wednesday vanishings felt different. They had a precision to them that normal overtime lacked. Priya sipped her now cold chai and scrolled back through their chat history. The Wednesday pattern had begun 3 months ago, shortly after their 4th wedding anniversary. Before that, Rahul had been predictably unpredictable, sometimes home early, sometimes late, but always reachable. "You're overthinking," she whispered to herself, setting down her phone. Their marriage had always been solid, not perfect, but real. They'd weathered the disappointment of fertility struggles together, supported each other's career ambitions, and maintained the small rituals that kept them connected despite busy schedules. Yet something had shifted. It wasn't just the Wednesdays. Rahul had become meticulous about his phone, always face down, always password protected with a new code she didn't know. His smiles seemed delayed, his embraces brief. Priya closed her patient files and walked to the window of their 11th floor apartment. The Mumbai skyline pulsed with lights, each one representing someone's life unfolding in real time. Somewhere in that landscape was her husband. Not working late as claimed, she was increasingly certain. Her colleague Deepa's words from lunch earlier that day echoed in her mind. "I saw Rahul last Wednesday at Café Azur. Wasn't he supposed to be working? He was dressed rather sharply for the office." Priya had laughed it off, crafting a quick explanation about a client meeting. But Café Azur wasn't in the financial district. It was across town, near the arts college where Priya and Rahul had first met 8 years ago when she was completing her master's degree and he was finishing his MBA. Her phone buzzed with a message from her brother. "Vikram, still on for lunch tomorrow? Neha's making your favorite paneer dish." The normalcy of the message almost made her cry. While her world felt increasingly built on digital illusions, others continued their honest existence. She typed back a quick confirmation, then opened her laptop. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard before typing "signs of a cheating spouse" into the search bar. The results made her stomach clench. She recognized too many patterns. Priya closed the laptop abruptly. This wasn't who she was, suspicious, paranoid, searching for evidence of betrayal. Yet the question remained. If Rahul was truly working late, why the need to go completely unavailable? She looked at the clock, 10:47 p.m. In less than 2 hours, Rahul would return, smelling faintly of cologne she hadn't bought him, with stories of spreadsheets and client demands. Tomorrow was Wednesday again, but this time, Priya decided, she wouldn't be sitting at home watching a status indicator. She would discover where her husband went when he disappeared from their digital world. She opened their shared calendar and added an entry for herself. "Working late, emergency patient consultation. 2 could play at vanishing." Shadows in the light. The Wednesday sky hung low over Mumbai, clouds pregnant with unshed monsoon rain. Priya checked her reflection in the rearview mirror of her rideshare. Her face betrayed nothing of the storm brewing within. She had left work early, telling her supervisor she needed personal time. Now, dressed in a casual salwar kameez that wouldn't draw attention, She waited across the street from Rahul's office building. At precisely 6:15 p.m., Rahul emerged, but instead of heading toward the parking garage where his car was kept, he walked briskly to the main road and hailed a taxi. Priya's heart hammered against her ribs as she instructed her driver to follow at a distance. The familiar skyline blurred as they weaved through evening traffic, heading not toward Café Azur as she had expected, but toward Juhu Beach. "Stop here," she instructed her driver when Rahul's taxi pulled up to a boutique hotel overlooking the Arabian Sea. The Hotel Samudra wasn't particularly exclusive or expensive. It was the type of place tourists chose for decent accommodations with an ocean view. Rahul disappeared through its glass doors without hesitation, like someone who knew exactly where he was going. Priya waited 15 minutes, breathing deeply to calm her racing pulse before entering the hotel herself. The lobby was modestly elegant with potted palms and rattan furniture. A small restaurant extended onto a terrace with fairy lights strung overhead. She scanned the area, finally spotting Rahul seated at a corner table facing the ocean. He wasn't alone, but his companion wasn't what Priya had expected. Sitting across from him was an elderly gentleman, perhaps in his 70s, with silver hair and a dignified bearing that seemed vaguely familiar. They were engrossed in conversation, heads bent together over what appeared to be old photographs spread across the table. Confusion replaced the dread in Priya's chest. She retreated to the lobby and sat in a chair partially hidden by a decorative screen, watching as Rahul and the older man talked for nearly 2 hours. There were no romantic gestures, no secret touches, just intense conversation punctuated occasionally by Rahul taking notes on his phone or the older man wiping his eyes. When they finally rose to leave, Rahul embraced the man with what looked like genuine affection. The older gentleman slipped something into Rahul's hand, a small object Priya couldn't identify from her position. They parted ways at the hotel entrance, and Rahul immediately checked his watch before pulling out his phone. Seconds later, Priya's own phone vibrated with a message. "Working late still. Don't wait up." She watched him walk not toward home or back to his office, but down the beach road toward a row of small shops and cafes. Priya followed at a distance, her confusion deepening when Rahul entered a jewelry store that was apparently staying open late for him. Through the window, she observed him speaking with the jeweler, who nodded and disappeared into a back room before returning with a small velvet box. Whatever Rahul was doing, it didn't resemble the affair she had imagined. Yet why the secrecy? Why the elaborate pattern of going unavailable? And who was the elderly man? Back at home, Priya meticulously searched their apartment for clues while waiting for Rahul's return. In his desk drawer beneath tax documents, she found an unmarked envelope containing old newspaper clippings. They featured a renowned classical musician, Ustad Farid Khan, who had passed away 30 years ago. One article mentioned his estranged son who had disappeared from the music scene following a family dispute. The elderly man's face suddenly clicked into place. He resembled an aged version of the musician in the clippings. But what connection did he have to Rahul, whose family had never mentioned any association with classical music or its prominent figures? At midnight, Priya heard Rahul's key in the lock. She had returned everything to its place and was pretending to sleep when he entered their bedroom. Through nearly closed eyes, she watched him carefully place the velvet box in his wardrobe safe before taking a shower. That night, lying beside her husband, this man she thought she knew completely, Priya realized that whatever secret Rahul was keeping, it was more complex than a simple infidelity. The shadows she had glimpsed contained unfamiliar shapes, stories she had never been told. Tomorrow she would confront him. But first she needed one more piece of the puzzle. With careful movements, she reached for her phone and searched for Ustad Farid Khan family. The results revealed decades of family drama, musical genius, and a fortune in rare instruments that had allegedly disappeared after the maestro's death. The digital world that had first alerted her to Rahul's deception now offered new mysteries. As rain finally began to fall against their bedroom window, Priya made a decision. She would visit Hotel Samudra herself tomorrow and find out who the elderly man was and why her husband had been keeping him a secret. The confrontation. The Hotel Samudra's reception desk was staffed by a young woman with an efficient smile. Priya had dressed carefully in business attire, projecting the confidence of someone who belonged. "I'm meeting Mr. Khan," she said, surprising herself with the steadiness of her voice. "I believe he's a regular guest here on Wednesdays?" The receptionist checked her computer. "Ustad Irfan Khan?" "Yes, he's in the garden pavilion for tea. Shall I show you the way?" Irfan Khan, not Farid, but possibly related. Priya nodded, following the receptionist through the lobby and out to a secluded garden area where the elderly man from yesterday sat alone, a steaming cup before him, gazing at the sea. "Excuse me?" Priya said gently. "Mr. Khan, my name is Priya Malhotra. I believe you know my husband, Rahul." The old man's eyes, dark and penetrating, widened with surprise before crinkling with unexpected warmth. "Ah, the physical therapist. Please sit. I have heard much about you." "That's interesting," Priya replied, taking the seat across from him, "because I've heard nothing about you." Irfan Khan's smile faded. He studied her face carefully before sighing. "So Rahul has not told you. I wondered if he would keep his promise of secrecy, even from his wife." "What promise? Who are you to my husband?" The old man's fingers, long and elegant despite age spots and slight tremors, wrapped around his teacup. "I am Irfan Khan, younger brother of Ustad Farid Khan, and your husband is my grandnephew, though he only discovered this connection recently." The revelation struck Priya like a physical blow. In 4 years of marriage, Rahul had never mentioned any relation to the Khan musical dynasty. His family, as far as she knew, were business people from Delhi with no artistic heritage. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Rahul's family name is Malhotra. He grew up in Delhi with his parents." "With his adoptive parents," Irfan corrected gently. "His birth mother was my niece, Leela Khan, who married against family wishes and was disowned. When she and her husband died in a car accident, their infant son, born Rehan Khan, now Rahul Malhotra, was adopted by the Malhotra family, who were distant relations of Leela's husband." Priya's mind raced, reconstructing her understanding of her husband's history. "But how did you find him? And why now?" Irfan set down his cup. "I have been searching for Leela's child for years. When my brother died, the family fractured over his legacy, both musical and financial. I was in Europe pursuing my own career when Leela was cast out. By the time I returned to India, she was gone, and the family denied any knowledge of her whereabouts." He paused, his expression clouding. "Last year, I was diagnosed with cancer. The prognosis was poor. Facing mortality makes one reconsider old grievances. I hired investigators who eventually traced Leela's history and discovered her son, your Rahul, was living in Mumbai. And the secrecy? The Wednesday meetings? Him going unavailable? That was my request," Irfan admitted. "The Khan family fortune, including several priceless instruments, disappeared after my brother's death. His older son, my nephew Timur, controls what remains of the family's assets. If he learned that another heir exists..." He left the implication hanging. "So the jewelry store visits?" "Ah," Irfan smiled sadly. "Rahul is helping me recover certain family heirlooms that were sold off over the years. Last night, he reacquired my mother's pendant, the last piece I hope to hold before I die." The truth was more extraordinary than any infidelity Priya had imagined, yet Rahul's deception still stung. She was about to respond when her phone buzzed with a message from Rahul himself. "Where are you? The hospital said you called in sick." Priya looked up at Irfan, whose expression had turned concerned. "He's checking on me," she explained, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Betrayal at Rahul's secrets, yet touched by his apparent concern. "Then perhaps it's time for truth between you," the old man suggested. "Tell him where you are. Let him come." Priya hesitated only briefly before typing. "I'm at Hotel Samudra with your uncle Irfan. I think we need to talk." The 3 dots appeared immediately, pulsed for a long moment, then disappeared without a response. 20 minutes later, Rahul strode into the garden pavilion, his face a mask of conflicting emotions: fear, anger, relief. "You followed me," he stated flatly, standing beside their table. "You lied to me," Priya countered. "For months." Irfan raised a hand. Please sit, Rahul. I have explained some things to your wife, but not all. That should come from you. As Rahul sank into a chair between them, the afternoon light caught the moisture in his eyes. I wanted to tell you, he said to Priya, but I promised Irfan to keep silent until certain matters were resolved. I never expected you to think that you were having an affair, Priya finished. What was I supposed to think? The secret meetings, the lies about working late, becoming unavailable online? I turn off my phone so it can't be tracked, Rahul explained. Timur Khan has resources. If he discovered Irfan had found me... The instruments, Irfan interjected. My brother's collection included a Stradivarius violin and 2 priceless sitars made by the legendary Ricky Ram. They disappeared the night he died. Timur claimed thieves took them, but I have always believed he hid them himself to prevent them from being divided among the heirs. And now, Priya asked. Rahul reached for her hand across the table. Now we found evidence of where they might be hidden. That's what I've been helping Irfan with, tracking down the instruments and family jewels before he broke off, unable to complete the sentence. Before I die, Irfan finished calmly, which the doctors tell me could be quite soon. The weight of what Rahul had been carrying alone, discovering his birth family, helping a dying man reclaim his heritage, protecting them all from a potentially dangerous relative, settled over Priya. Yet the hurt of exclusion remained. You could have trusted me, she said softly. We're partners, Rahul. Whatever this is, we could have faced it together. I wanted to protect you, he replied, his voice breaking. But I see now, that wasn't my decision to make. As the three sat in the fading afternoon light, the sound of waves breaking against the shore provided a rhythmic backdrop to their conversation. Secrets laid bare, truths acknowledged. But the most difficult question remained unspoken between husband and wife. Could trust, once broken, be fully restored? Broken signals. Raindrops raced each other down the window of Priya's temporary apartment. It had been 34 days since the confrontation at Hotel Samudra, 34 days of separate living spaces and carefully worded text messages. Their separation wasn't angry or bitter. It was contemplative, a pause button pressed on their marriage while Priya processed Rahul's deception and her own reactions. She had taken a small, furnished flat near the hospital where she worked, telling colleagues it was because of the commute. Rahul remained in their apartment, continuing his clandestine work with Irfan while giving Priya the space she had requested. Their communication had evolved into a strange digital dance. Where once Rahul had disappeared from the online world without explanation, now they existed primarily as text on screens. Weekly update messages, practical exchanges about bills and their shared accounts, occasional questions that skirted the edges of their emotions without diving deep. Priya set down her teacup and stared at her phone. Today marked a turning point. Irfan Khan had been admitted to hospital with pneumonia, his already weakened system struggling against the infection. Rahul had messaged earlier, Irfan asking for you. No pressure, but if you could visit... She had agreed to meet Rahul at the hospital at 5. Now, watching Mumbai dissolve into sheets of monsoon rain, she wondered what Irfan could want from her, a woman he had met only once, the wife of a grandnephew he barely knew. The hospital corridor smelled of antiseptic and despair. Rahul was waiting outside Irfan's room, his normally impeccable appearance showing signs of strain. Stubble shadowed his jaw, and dark circles underlined his eyes. He's been asking for both of us, Rahul explained, his voice hoarse. The doctors say it's a matter of days now. Priya nodded, maintaining the careful distance they had established. Has he found what he was looking for? The instruments? We located the violin last week. An American collector had purchased it without knowing its provenance. The sitars remain missing, but Irfan... Rahul paused, swallowing hard. He's made peace with leaving that search unfinished. Inside the room, Irfan appeared diminished against the white hospital linens, his once commanding presence reduced to fragile bones and labored breath. Yet his eyes remained sharp, brightening when he saw Priya enter behind Rahul. "You came," he whispered. "Good. Sit, both of you." They took chairs on either side of his bed. Irfan reached for both their hands, creating a physical connection between the three of them. "I have been thinking about signals," he said, each word carefully measured against his dwindling strength. In music, it is not just the notes played that create meaning, but also the silences between them. "These past weeks, you two have created many silences." Priya glanced at Rahul, who was staring at his uncle's withered hand clasping his own. "Before I leave this world," Irfan continued, "I want to know I have not destroyed something beautiful by bringing my family's troubled history into your lives." "You haven't," Rahul began, but Irfan shook his head. "Let me finish. My brother Fareed was a musical genius, but a terrible father and husband. His obsession with perfection drove away everyone who loved him. I watched him sacrifice relationships for legacy." Irfan's gaze intensified. "Legacy is meaningless without love to give it context." He released their hands and reached beneath his pillow, extracting a small package wrapped in silk. With trembling fingers, he unveiled a gold pendant set with emeralds. "This belonged to my mother, and before her, her mother. It is said in our family that it was a gift from the Nizam of Hyderabad after my great-grandfather performed at court." He held it toward Priya. "I want you to have it." Priya shook her head. "I couldn't. It should stay in your family." "You are family," Irfan insisted. "And more importantly, you represent the future of this family. Whatever decisions you and Rahul make about your marriage, this belongs with you." As Priya hesitantly accepted the pendant, Irfan turned to Rahul. "The search for the sitars ends today." "Promise me you will stop," Rahul frowned. "But Taimur will eventually face his own conscience," Irfan interrupted. "I was wrong to involve you in this vendetta. Some broken things cannot be repaired, and some legacies are not worth the cost." Later, in the hospital cafeteria, Priya and Rahul sat across from each other, the pendant resting on the table between them like a green-eyed witness to their uncomfortable silence. "I've been offered a position at the Children's Hospital in Pune," Priya finally said. 6 months, possibly extending to permanent. The news hit Rahul visibly. "You're leaving Mumbai?" "I haven't decided. It's a good opportunity, but—" She traced the edge of her coffee cup. "I don't know if running away solves anything." "Is that what it would be? Running away? Maybe. Or maybe it's just giving myself the distance to see our situation clearly." Rahul nodded slowly. "I understand. For what it's worth, these weeks without you have been illuminating. I realize now how much I took for granted. Not just your presence, but your partnership." He met her eyes directly. "I thought I was protecting you, but really I was underestimating you." The admission hung between them, honest in a way their recent communications had not been. Priya fingered the pendant, feeling its weight, the history it carried, the expectations it represented. "What happens when Irfan is gone?" she asked quietly. "Taimur will eventually learn about me," Rahul acknowledged. "But I've decided to decline any claim to the Khan family assets. Whatever legal right I might have, I don't want that legacy of bitterness." For the first time in weeks, Priya felt something shift between them, a recognition that perhaps they were still aligned in core values, if not in recent actions. "And us?" she ventured. "What happens to us?" Rahul didn't answer immediately. When he did, his voice carried a certainty she hadn't heard since before the revelations. "That depends on whether you believe some broken signals can be restored. I'd like to try, but only if you would." Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving Mumbai washed clean and glistening. Priya pocketed the pendant and stood. "I need to think." "About Pune, about us, about everything." Rahul nodded, not pushing. "I understand. Take the time you need." As Priya walked away, her phone buzzed with a message. She expected it to be from Rahul, perhaps a final word. Instead, it was from the Pune hospital administrator, requesting a decision by the end of the week. 2 paths stretched before her: a fresh start in a new city, or the complex work of rebuilding what had been broken. Both required courage. Both promised pain and possibility in equal measure. That night in her temporary apartment, Priya placed Irfan's pendant on her nightstand and opened her laptop. She began typing an email, not to the hospital administrator, not to Rahul, but to herself. Subject line, "What I really want." The cursor blinked, patient and persistent, waiting for her truth to take digital form. Reconnecting. 6 months later, the Jahangir Art Gallery hummed with the refined excitement of Mumbai's cultural elite. A collection of rare musical instruments had been donated to the National Center for the Performing Arts by an anonymous benefactor, and tonight marked the exhibition's opening gala. Priya adjusted her sari, emerald green silk that complemented Irfan's pendant at her throat, and scanned the crowd. She hadn't expected to attend alone, but Vikram and Neha's babysitter had canceled at the last minute. Her brother had insisted she go anyway, pressing the invitation into her hand with a knowing smile. "You should be there," he had said. For Irfan. Irfan Khan had passed away peacefully 3 months earlier, leaving behind a complicated legacy that included not only his own considerable musical achievements, but also a complete confession about the long-missing instruments from his brother's collection. They had never been stolen or hidden by Taimur, as he had suspected. Irfan himself had secured them the night of his brother's death, fearing they would be sold to settle debts rather than preserved for future generations. His deathbed confession, witnessed by Rahul and documented by a lawyer, had sent shockwaves through the Khan family. Taimur, far from being the villain of Irfan's imagination, had spent decades searching for his father's precious instruments while being unjustly suspected by his own uncle. The realization that he had perpetuated a false narrative haunted Irfan in his final days. His last wish, that the instruments be donated anonymously to the nation rather than returned to family ownership, was his attempt at atonement. Priya paused before a display case containing a Stradivarius violin. Its warm wood gleamed under precisely calibrated lighting. The accompanying placard describing its journey from 18th century Italy to colonial India, and finally to this climate-controlled case in modern Mumbai. "It looks smaller in person, doesn't it?" a familiar voice observed. Priya turned to find Rahul standing beside her, impeccable in a charcoal suit. The sight of him, expected yet somehow still surprising, triggered the now familiar flutter in her chest, a complex emotion that wasn't quite pain anymore, but hadn't fully healed into something else. "I didn't know you would be here," she said, though part of her had hoped. "Taimur invited me. We've been meeting regularly since Irfan's funeral. He's nothing like the monster his uncle described." Rahul studied the violin, rather than looking at her directly. "How's Pune?" "Challenging. Rewarding." Priya's response was polite but genuine. "The hospital program is expanding faster than expected." They stood in silence, two people who had once shared everything now carefully selecting which truths to offer each other. "You kept the pendant," Rahul finally noted, his gaze moving to her throat. Priya's fingers automatically rose to touch it. It felt wrong to leave it behind. Another silence stretched between them, filled with the ambient sounds of the gallery, appreciative murmurs, crystal glasses clinking, the subtle notes of a sitar being played in an adjacent room. "I filed the divorce papers last week," Rahul said quietly, "as you requested." The statement should have brought relief, closure to the limbo they had existed in since her move to Pune. Instead, Priya felt a sudden hollowness expand beneath her ribs. "I see," she managed. "They're in my briefcase," he continued. "Unsigned." Her eyes snapped to his, questioning. "I couldn't do it," Rahul admitted. "Not without seeing you once more, face to face. Not without asking if you're certain." Before Priya could respond, a distinguished man in his 60s approached them. Taimur Khan, she realized, recognizing him from photos Rahul had shared. "Ah, Rahul, there you are," Taimur said warmly, before turning to Priya with a respectful nod. "And you must be Dr. Malhotra. I've heard much about your work with children." The three engaged in polite conversation about the exhibition, the instruments, the importance of preserving cultural heritage. Throughout the exchange, Priya felt Rahul's attention on her like a physical presence, asking questions his lips wouldn't form in public. When Timur eventually excused himself to greet other guests, Rahul gestured toward a doorway leading to a small balcony overlooking the gallery's courtyard. "Could we talk?" "Properly." Outside, the evening air carried the scent of frangipani from the courtyard below. Mumbai sprawled around them, a constellation of lights against the darkening sky. "I made a mistake," Priya said before Rahul could speak. "Not in going to Pune. I needed that space, that independence. But in thinking distance would provide clarity." Rahul leaned against the balcony railing. "And has it?" "No or yes, but not the kind I expected." She faced him directly. "I learned that trust isn't just about honesty, it's about respect. You didn't trust me enough to include me in your struggle. I didn't trust that your deception might come from a place of love, however misguided." "And now?" Rahul's voice was carefully neutral. "Now I understand that relationships aren't digital. They can't be reduced to online or offline, available or unavailable. They exist in the complicated analog space between certainty and doubt." The pendant felt warm against her skin as she continued. "Irfan's story taught me something important. He spent decades believing a falsehood about his nephew, allowing suspicion to consume him. In the end, his greatest regret wasn't the lost years, but the truth he never sought." "What truth are you seeking, Priya?" She took a deep breath. "Whether I still love you enough to rebuild what we had? Whether you still love me enough to try?" Rahul didn't answer immediately. Instead, he reached into his pocket and withdrew his phone, powering it off completely before setting it on the balcony ledge between them. "No more unavailable status," he said. "No more digital barriers. Just us, present and accounted for." The gesture, simple yet profound, bridged months of separation in an instant. Priya found herself moving toward him without conscious decision, closing the physical gap that had mirrored their emotional distance. "The divorce papers," she whispered. "I don't want them." Rahul's arms encircled her, tentative at first, then with growing certainty. "Neither do I." Below in the courtyard, a musician began playing one of Ustad Farid Khan's compositions on a sitar, perhaps one of the very instruments that had caused so much family strife. The notes rose around them, complex and beautiful, each one distinct, yet part of a greater harmony. "Come home," Rahul murmured against her hair. "To Mumbai. To us." Priya thought of her position in Pune, the independence she had carved out, the life she had begun building separate from Rahul. It wasn't a simple decision. Returning wouldn't erase the hurt or instantly restore what had been damaged. "Not yet," she said finally, feeling him stiffen slightly before she continued. "But I'll transfer back to Mumbai Hospital. We'll date again, properly this time, learn each other anew, and this time, no secrets." Relief softened his features as he nodded. "No secrets. No going offline when things get difficult." As the sitar music reached its crescendo, Priya rested her head against Rahul's shoulder. The pendant at her throat caught the light from inside the gallery, casting small green reflections across their joined hands, a legacy transformed from burden to blessing. Some connections once established never truly vanish. They may weaken, distort, or temporarily disappear, but remain accessible to those willing to search beyond the surface, beyond digital status indicators and convenient half-truths. In the space between disconnection and reunion, Priya and Rahul had found a truth more valuable than any inherited treasure. That love, like music, requires both sound and silence to create something worth preserving.